Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, where I seek truth in the world's great books. I'm your host, Eric Rostad, coming to you from the beautiful Books of Titans studio in Franklin, Tennessee. My goal is to read 200 of the great books over the next 10 years and share what I'm learning. I'll talk a bit about each book, tie ideas together from a variety of genres, and share the one thing I always hope to remember from each of the great books. Today I'm going to cover Heracles by Euripides. This is from book 32 for my 2024 reading list, and Euripides is selection 15 for my great books reading list. Well, you probably know Heracles as Hercules. Hercules is the Latin version of Heracles, which is Greek. And this play, which is simply called Heracles, is also known in a few other ways. And the first one is Heracles Meinomaios, which I probably just butchered. Sorry, Greek speakers. But that just means the madness of Heracles. In Latin, it's also known as Hercules Fuerens, which is Furious Heracles. So we'll find out why in this episode when I walk us through this particular tragedy play. But there's this idea of the madness of Heracles, the fury of Heracles. So historically, this was written in 420 BC by Euripides, and this would have been in the midst of the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. It's something I'm reading about right now in the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides. So I just find it interesting to consider that these plays were written and then performed. I believe this one was first performed in Athens in 416. So again, kind of in the midst of this long 27-year war happening, and this would have been performed in the midst of all that. And so is the audience, is that in the back of their mind? And I think so, and I'll cover that a little later in some of the things about this play, specifically about the madness of Heracles. So mythologically speaking, in that time frame, this play takes place after the tragedy play I covered last week, which was Children of Heracles. So despite Euripides writing this 10 years after the Children of Heracles, mythologically they would have been switched to where this play would have taken place before the Children of Heracles. Well, as always with tragedy plays, you always want to start out considering three main things, and just to get these in your head right away. The first is, who is the chorus? The second is, who is the first speaker? And then third, where is this taking place? So the chorus is of Theban elders, and that can tie into the location, which is in Thebes. So the chorus is just a group of Theban elder, and they are elder. They are old men, and we find out why that is important later in this play. But they're in Thebes. And the first speaker is Amphitryon, who is the father of Heracles, and he is with the three sons of Heracles, as well as the wife of Heracles. The wife of Heracles is named Megara. So they are in Thebes. They're at the altar of Zeus, the deliverer of suppliants. So they are hanging on to the altar. They're around the altar as suppliants because they are in trouble. There is a new king in Thebes, and this king wants to kill them. The king wants to kill the sons of Heracles. He wants to kill the wife of Heracles, and he wants to kill the father of Heracles. And I'll share why in just a minute, but those are the three things that get us started with this play. So I'm going to take it like I've done the last couple episodes, where I just walk through the play, walk through this tragedy, and just cover some themes, cover what the storyline, what's happening, and then I'll kind of take a step back and read some of the really moving scenes or the dialogue that really stuck out to me. So let's start here. What's taking place, the situation that we arrive in, is that Heracles is doing his final labor. And if you know the story of Heracles, he had 12 labors that Eurystheus had him complete, and he is on the last one, and that last one is to bring back Cerberus from Hades. And so that's where Heracles is during the start of this play. So he is not in Thebes, he is not able to protect his family, but his family is in deep trouble. And so that's where we're at. The events of this tragedy take place in this scene. Lycus is the king, and he has taken the throne of Thebes away from Creon. He has killed Creon, and he is now seeking to kill the children of Heracles. And so Lycus, he says this: I killed this woman's father Creon. I hold his throne, so I have no wish to let these boys grow up and take revenge on me. End quote. So that's what's happened here. Creon used to be the king, and Creon's daughter Megara is the wife of Heracles. And so by Lycus killing Creon, that it gives good reason for the children of Heracles to seek revenge on this Lycus. And so we're in a situation here where the family is in trouble, and the only thing saving them at the moment is that they are at this altar of Zeus, and that is for the moment being respected. But right at the beginning, we get some talk about friendship, and this is a theme that shows up throughout this particular play, and it's an important theme. But I just want to read the start of where this comes up. So this is Amphitryon in his opening monologue, and this comes right at the end of that opening. Help and hope are out of sight. Some we thought friends have proved not so, while our true friends are powerless. Trouble is the surest test of friends. The gods keep trouble far from any friend of mine. End quote. So here we see that they're in a load of trouble. Friends they hoped would come through for them have not. And trouble is the surest test of friends. So I want you to remember that. That will come up big later on. So we find Amphitryon protecting these three children, and Megara, they are at this altar of Zeus. But Megara has lost all hope in Heracles returning. So let me read what she has to say. Again, Heracles is in Hades. So here's what Megara, his wife, says. As for the hope you cherish, that your son will come back from the depths, I'll tell you what such hope is worth. What dead man has returned to life from the dark world? End quote. So Megara does not have any hope that her husband is going to come back. No one has come back from the dead. No one has come back from Hades. And so she doesn't think that Heracles will save them. Amphitryon is pretty sure that any friends they have will not save them. So they are in a desperate situation here. The chorus that I mentioned, the chorus of elder men from Thebes, they are super concerned with the children, but as I mentioned, they are elder, and so they just bemoan the fact that they're too old to do anything about this. They cannot help the children. So no help coming from anywhere except that Heracles arrives, and he calls it, he comes in and says kind of right away that it's been a mistake that he's focused his life on these labors instead of his family. And he ends up killing the king of Thebes. He ends up killing the unsuspecting Lycus. And so this is where things get very weird. We're kind of at the midpoint of this tragedy play, and all of a sudden, Iris, who's known as the messenger, and Madness, the god Madness, appear. And it's in a situation of deus ex machina, which is in these tragedy plays, this would usually happen at the very end of the play. There would be a machine that would kind of lift the actor over the stage. And so it's a machine but it would be this god character that would kind of set all things right at the end. It was kind of a end of the play, like, let's just clear the tables and make sure everything turns out well. But again, this usually happens at the end of a play if it's used at all. But here in almost the dead center of the play, you have these gods showing up, and they show up at the behest of Hera. And again, Hera is the wife of Zeus, the jealous wife of Zeus. And she has had it in for Heracles his entire life. She is actually his stepmother because Zeus slept with Heracles' mother, and they had Heracles. And so Amphitryon in this play is the human father, but Zeus kind of worked his way in to sleep with Amphitryon's wife, and they had this half god, half human son, Heracles. So I want to read this part here when Iris and Madness show up, because it's very interesting. So this is a little longer section, but stick with me here. This is Iris speaking, Iris the messenger. Elders, take heart. You need not tremble at this vision. You see here madness, daughter of night, and me, Iris, servant of the gods. We bring no harm to Thebes, but aim our stroke at one man's house, whom Zeus begot, they say, of Alcmene. Before he had accomplished all his fearful labors, fate preserved him, nor would Zeus his father permit me or Hera to raise hand against him. But now that he has performed in full Eurystheus' tasks, Hera desires, and I am with her, to fasten on Heracles the guilt of kindred blood, making him kill his children. Come then, virgin child of murky night, close up your heart against all pity, send maniac fury on this man, distort his mind with lust for his own children's blood. Cut murder's cable, rack him with lunatic convulsions, that when he with guilt-red hand has sent his crown of lovely sons over the river of death, he may perceive how hot is Hera's anger against him, and learn my hate too. If Heracles escape our punishment, then gods are nowhere, and the mortal race may rule the earth. End quote. So a lot going on there. Again, that was Iris the messenger saying that she's going to unleash madness on Heracles at the behest of Hera for the purpose that he would kill his own children. And the reason being to fasten on Heracles the guilt of kindred blood. And so just this cruel, cruel thing, one, to make Heracles mad, to kill his own children, but to put this guilt of kindred blood on him as well. And we've seen this in other tragedy plays. This usually leads to the furies that attack the person the rest of their lives. You can't kill kin, you can't kill family and just have it be okay. This will unleash these furies that will attack the murderer's mind for the rest of their life. And so that's what ends up happening. Heracles goes mad. And not only does he kill his 3 sons, but he kills his wife, Megara, as well. He's about to kill his father, and Athena stops him from doing that. But he has killed his 3 sons and Megara. So, and he's killed them with his bow and arrow, his beloved bow and arrow. Let me read what happens after that. We have Amphitryon, his father, saying this: wife murderer, child murderer, master of the bowstrings, deadly music. End quote. And so Amphitryon, his father, is the one who must tell him when he wakes out of this madness. He must tell him that he has in fact killed his own family. And just that idea of master of the bowstrings, deadly music. So this idea of the bow and arrow, the string on that bow, creating deadly music. That's another theme that popped up in another of the tragedy plays about Heracles. Theseus arrives. Theseus is the king of Athens, and Heracles has saved him from Hades in one of his earlier labors. So Theseus owes him in a way, but they're also friends. And this is where friendship really comes up, and that theme returns. And Theseus comes, and so he arrives in the midst of just this carnage, and he sees the family killed by Heracles' bow. And he decides to share in the grief of Heracles. So let me read what Theseus says here. And this is him coming upon Heracles. You who sit there in utter misery, look up and show your friend your face. There is no darkness bears a cloak so black as could conceal your suffering. Why wave your hand to warn me of the taint of blood? For fear your words pollute me? I am not afraid to share your deep affliction with you as I shared your victory. This bond was made between us when you brought me back from darkness to the world of light. I hate a friend whose gratitude grows dim with age, one who will enjoy his friend's prosperity but not sail with him in rough weather. Come, unwrap your head, stand up, look at me, Heracles. A noble heart endures the strokes of gods or fate and does not flinch. End quote. That is such a beautiful ode to friendship. It's such a beautiful calling out of his friend of just absolute darkness. This is the worst thing that can happen to a parent, that they are not only that their children have been killed, but they've been killed by the hand of the Father. This has to be the worst thing that can happen. And so Theseus, instead of running away from this would have polluted the person. This would have polluted Heracles. But Theseus does not abide by that, does not abide by the pollution in the sense of getting away from him or not drawing near. And so he draws near with this just, calling him out of this grief and just lift up your head. And Heracles is so down by this point. He wants to die, and he wants to die by suicide. He cannot imagine a life going forward where he has to be reminded daily of what he has done, what he's done with his bow. And so he's talking about suicide, Heracles is, and Theseus responds with this. I understand all you have said, yet I cannot commend your wish to die, but rather counsel you to live and suffer. No man lives unscathed by chance, nor, if we may believe the poets, does any god. Have not gods joined in lawless love among themselves, dishonored fatherhood with chains to gain a throne? Yet they live in Olympus, and if they have sinned, they are not inconsolable. What's your defense if you, a man, cry against fate, while gods do not? And I'll stop reading it there. A lot going on there, a lot with just kind of questioning the gods, questioning the poets of earlier days who wrote about these gods, and calling him out to live and suffer. It's not going to be a pleasant road forward, but he's saying, do not kill yourself. Live and suffer. No man lives unscathed by chance. And so Heracles does decide to continue on. He does not commit suicide. And later on, he says this, and he talks about this bow that has been such a victory for him in his life, and especially in the labors that he's done, the labors that have led to peace around him, to peace for those in the places where he lives. But it's also led to this utter destruction and devastation as well. So here is Heracles. My bow, which I have loved and lived with, and now loathe. What shall I do? Keep it or let it go? This bow hung at my side will talk. With me you killed your wife and children. Keep me, and you keep their murderer. Shall I keep it and carry it? With what excuse? And yet disarmed of this, with which I did such deeds as none in Hellas equaled, must I shamefully yield to my enemies and die? Never. This bow is anguish to me, yet I cannot part with it. Let's stop reading there. The play concludes with this statement of friendship. If any man thinks wealth or power of greater worth to him who has them than a good friend, he is mad. At this, we see Heracles leaving for Athens with Theseus. I love that last statement. If any man thinks wealth or power of greater worth to him who has them than a good friend, he is mad. So you have two of those main themes, two of those main ideas that show up in this play spoken about there, friendship and madness. But if someone thinks wealth or power is greater worth than this good friend, he is mad. And so it's almost this, at the very end, almost a redefinition of madness. We've seen what madness can do. The madness takes over Heracles. He kills his children and his wife. That is a tragic, utter destructive version of madness. And yet here's another way of madness, of thinking that wealth or power are of greater worth than a friend like Theseus, who will walk with Heracles through this pain. So those are some of the themes. I want to just kind of talk about a few more, and then go just deeper too into some of that I mentioned. Again, friendship saves Heracles in this. And I just, when I was reading it, I was just thinking of when people go through such utter tragic things in life, how important friends are in that. Again, just think of the time frame of this play. It's being performed amidst the Peloponnesian War. There's probably soldiers in the audience as they're watching this play being performed. And that idea of madness too, which the Greeks had a name for, called Lysa. And let me read from an intro here. about what that is. So here, madness takes the form the Greeks called Lysa, a personification of the peculiar male form of mental disorientation of which trained killers are vulnerable, the madness characteristic of soldiers who have gone berserk on the battlefield. So again, you have this play being written at a time where people are returning from war, soldiers are returning from war, having probably experienced this. Probably having done things that they don't know how to get beyond, things they're ashamed of, things that they want to kill themselves for. I mean, you just even look at the soldiers in the United States, the suicide rate there, just how difficult it is to come back, how important friends are in that transition, and this real thing of madness that takes hold of people. And so here it's presented as this madness that is a god that takes over the brain of Heracles. But we know of madness as well. We know of how these things can impact, especially soldiers who are returning from war. So I just think that those two themes are so important, especially to the audience of Euripides. We also have fate show up here. I've talked about fate a lot just in the different Greek literature that I've read the last 2 years. But I want to read one thing here. When the gods spread misfortune like a net, to try to struggle out is folly more than bravery. For what will be, no one can alter it. So again, here you kind of have this unrelenting march of fate going on, and you see that with the madness coming, and why, kind of that question too of why does this happen? Why does this happen to Heracles? He's just completed these 12 labors that have led to peace and prosperity for the people around him. They have gotten rid of monsters. He's gotten rid of things that have plagued his society, and it doesn't matter. The gods still just take him out in such a cruel way that his mind will be disturbed. His mind will be reminding him of this. The bow that has been his calling, his joy in life, the thing that has led to his victory, that thing has now led to his devastation, and yet he can't part with it. So he's always got this bow with him. He's always got this reminder, as if the reminder in his head would never go away either. And it ties into another theme of this play of reputation, and just how he can't part from this bow that has led to this reputation, his strength. He's the strong man of Greece, and yet this bow is the one that's led to the death of his family when he's in his madness. But the story continues from there in Greek literature. This same bow is given to Philoctetes. Philoctetes uses that bow, the bow of Heracles, to kill Paris. Paris, who has stolen Helen from the Greeks, which has led to the Trojan War. This bow of Heracles, this devastating bow, this victorious bow of Heracles, is the very weapon that takes out Paris. So it's just incredible how these stories, how these things continue on, and this tragic thing for Heracles can end up being the thing that kills the source in many ways of the Trojan War. One other big theme in this play is hope, and so remember at the beginning where Megara, the wife of Heracles, she loses hope. She does not ever think that Heracles will return from death, will return from Hades, and he does. But then you've also got this hope that Theseus gives to his friend Heracles in friendship. This hope that despite having a desire to kill himself, there's this hope that Theseus offers Heracles that can get him through these dark thoughts. This is one of 19 surviving plays by Euripides. I'm going to read all 19. At first, I just planned to read 2 of them, but I love them. I love them so much that I just said, I'm going to buy however many books it takes to get all 19 of these plays, and I'm going to read all of them. He wrote over 90 in his life, only 19 survive. I also got the book of fragments to see what those other 70 plays are about, that will be in the Book of Fragments. So I look forward to reading that as well. The version I did for this one of Heracles is the Penguin Classics version, and it's one that contains 4 plays: Medea, Hecabe, Electra, and Heracles. The translation is done by Philip Vellicott, and 2 of the books of Euripides plays are by him. I love his translations. I love his introductions. So if you need a good translator, I've really enjoyed Philip Vellicott. I also read the intro and notes in the Oxford World Classics version, and that translation and notes, those are done by Robin Waterfield. And I have a few of the Oxford World Classics of Euripides, and Robin Waterfield is the person who has done those. So very helpful. I've loved both of those, but the version that I read was the Penguin Classics translation by Vellicott. I only looked at the notes in the Waterfield one. So if I was to pull out one thing from this tragedy, it would be friendship. It would be that theme of friendship in grief. And just how that saves Heracles. And I just remember reading this for the first time and that sticking out so much of how it saved Heracles, how it's really unexpected in the play because he's just murdered his whole family. He's in utter devastation. He's looking at the carnage around him and just, what is he going to do? And Theseus shows up and is not ashamed of him, is not backing away from him. In fact, he's moving toward his friend, and he saves him in friendship. And I thought it was just such a beautiful picture amidst this horror, this tragedy and this horror that is part of this play. Now, as I'm reading Thucydides and seeing what's happening historically around this time, it just makes me wonder too how much Euripides was writing into his time period and almost offering a way out for those returning from these battles. That's just another fascinating thing to consider, and hopefully it helped some people in his time. I know people study the Iliad who have returned from war. There's many books about that, and so some of these tragedies, some of these works of Greek literature can help people in some of these just dire situations, and I think that's just very interesting, and they've tapped into something about the human spirit that has lasted for a long time, in this case 2,400 years. So to recap, Heracles is just an interesting person in Greek literature, demigod, half man, and there are a number of tragedy plays about him. He's the strong man of the land. He's the savior of the land. He's brought peace through these labors that he's done, these 12 labors that he's undertaken. But look at the suffering that came with that. These great works, these great labors that he does, they don't save him from fate. They don't save him from the plans of the gods. And it's disturbing. You want to kind of hope that someone who has done this much will be left alone by the gods. And yet here they almost do the most cruel thing that you could ever do to someone, of put a madness in them to where they kill their own children. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. I am on Substack now, so this podcast is hosted on Substack. And one of the reasons I did that was just to have ways for you to support the podcast if you get value out of it. So I have a plan for $5 a month, $99 a month, or $500. $5 a month, $99 a year, or $500 per year. I now have 15 people supporting the podcast in one of these 3 manners, and I am so thankful for you guys. It allows me to keep this going and just cover some of the costs that show up with books and hosting and website and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for that. It is a labor of love. I love reading. I would do this whether money was coming in or not, but that surely helps. So thank you again. If you would like to comment or share something that you've gotten out of reading Heracles, please do that on Substack. So just go to Books of Titans, look for this episode, and then there's a comments field at the bottom. That helps just open it up and open up communication about this episode, so other people can see that. They can comment on what you say. Maybe you ask some questions or that sort of thing. So please use that. If you would like to email me directly, just use eric@booksoftitans.com. You can follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter @Books of Titans. And my website is stock full of resources to help you find the best books and to create your own reading list. That is at books.booksoftitans.com. So the Substack is booksoftitans.com. The kind of the resources and reading lists and great books reading lists and all that is at books.booksoftitans.com. And there's plenty of links going back and forth between those. I should be back next week to discuss another book. I'm hoping to finish Thucydides at that point and maybe do an episode on that. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.